Hey folks! Today I decided to cover a high-level cultural game from the year 2000 developed by Ritual Entertainment that previously worked on my beloved scene. Heavy Metal F.A.K.K, which stands for Federation Assigned Ketogenic Killzone to the second level, if you were curious. By the way, this game is a direct sequel to the animated movie Heavy Metal 2000, which is, well, let's say, an interesting watch if you ignore the terrible CGI and many other drawbacks. Now, I do not intend to lecture you on the history of heavy metal as a magazine, or tell you how the original 1981 animated movie is. Go fucking watch it. Let's just focus on this curious classic. The game is a third-person shooter, in which the heroine, Julie, can equip two different weapons in each hand and perform special combos. Though being considered mainly as a shooter, the game is heavily focused on melee combat, and just saying, I used for most of the time the swords and the shield, because the ammo for the firearms is not much abundant, and besides, it feels pretty badass to cut enemies with the fire sword or the chainsaw sword. And apart from the combat, the game also features a lot of platforming and a bit of puzzle solving, all things I'll delve into later. As for the story, well, 30 years after the events of the movie, Julie is a celebrated heroine that saved her people and perhaps the whole galaxy from the tyrant demigod Tyler, and lives in peace with her now pregnant sister Kerrie on the planet of Eden, where people have stopped their aging thanks to the miraculous water that flows within the planet. Everything seems to be perfect, except that lately some large asteroids have hit the barrier that protects the planet, and soon shit starts to go wrong, because suddenly strange killer insects appear out of nowhere and start attacking people and even livestock, and after some struggles, Julie ends up killing the gargantuan Vimish mama in the underground. If it wasn't enough, first the glowing green stones arrived from space start to mutate the local fauna into frightening beasts. Then Julie has visions of a horrifying creature, and soon after the barrier collapses and must be restored immediately. However, before all this chaos begins, the game offers a calm section, where we can see Julie interact with her friends and fellow citizens.
Good morning! We're indeed fortunate that our champion is also a vision of such stunning beauty.
What a load of crap.
Your pardon, Julie?
Oh, that's quite a full car you got there.
And also an optional comprehensive tutorial that teaches all the necessary features, from how to equip the various weapons in each hand, to how to fight and defend, to all the athletic moves Julie is capable of. The first thing I found interesting is that all one-handed melee weapons must be equipped on the right hand, hence we'll have to attack with the right mouse button, while the left hand holds the shield or light firearms, like the pistol and the crossbow. With the one-handed swords we can make different attacks, like the two simple consecutive strikes and the quick ones while strafing, which are very useful. However, by first holding down the right mouse button and then the left one, Julie will perform a combo, and if she holds a firearm or a shield in her left hand, she will perform different special combinations, which are one of the most distinctive features of the game. Also, we'll have to get used to selecting weapons divided in several categories, and remember which ones should be equipped in the right and left hand. At first it will seem a bit clunky, but it's no big deal. And another interesting feature is that if Julie equips two firearms, she will auto-aim to enemies at once, just like the protagonist of the later Blood Rain. The overall combat in Heavy Metal F.A.K.K is quite fun. It's fast and brutal, and there are many weapons divided in 5 categories. In addition to those already mentioned, there's this powerful shotgun that fires plasma and launches grenades, then the classic rocket launcher, a heavy chain gun, and the so-called soul sucker that absorbs water from enemies like a vacuum. It's kinda useful, unlike the Horn of Conjuring, that permits to create a total of 10 Vimishes before becoming useless. though somewhere I've read that it has infinite ammo, but it doesn't seem correct to me. Overall, it's a nice assortment of weapons, though some like the slingshot and the explosive charges are mostly used to solve some kind of puzzles, but that's okay. For a game released in 2000, it's not that bad. I mean, it could have been much worse, and I just disliked how it's difficult to eat the freaking bugs, for example, or how some kind of ammo are super scarce, like the fuel for the flamethrower or the secondary attack for the chainsword. It literally doesn't less shit at all. An important role is played by the water supply, which has many effects. Primarily, it absorbs damage, and when it's full, it makes Julie run much faster and jump very far. For example, in one of the first levels, we'll have to exploit to reach the fire sword located in a secret niche. See, exploration always pays well. And just by entering any pool of clean water scattered around the levels, we can restore the water supply by an half. And besides, the fire and electrical swords require a minimum of water to function properly. The platforming instead, well, it's not considered the most exciting part of the game. Julie is very athletic and can jump and cling to many ledges, or even ropes with which to reach distant areas, giving herself the right momentum. She can also grab to monkey bars or iron beams and thus avoid various hazards. The problem is that the controls are not very precise. For example, grabbing the monkey bars can require a few attempts, and I fell into the void or landed on the wrong platform a lot of times. To be honest, it's not that terrible and unplayable as some other people say. Yes, it feels quite stiff, and that time you make a mistake, well, just reload the game. It's not difficult to do. And besides, I liked some interactions, like this part on these platforms, where Julie's weight changes the inclination. Regarding the puzzles, these are quite a few and very easy, nothing that requires a guide. I just had problems to figure out this one that requires to shoot the log with the slingshot. And you know what? I didn't like much these puzzles that involve these little creatures called Jlicks, because it always involves feeding them to these carnivorous plants. I mean, come on, that's brutal. Poor little things. By the way, Heavy Metal F.A.K.K. is a very short and condensed game, around 4 or 5 hours in total, and this might seem like a big flaw, but I think it's in line with its purpose and story. See, in order to save again her people from the new menace that is, let's call it the evil corporation named GITH, which commands an army of monstrous cyborgs, Julie is tasked to retrieve immediately the relic called the Heart of the We. To succeed, she will must travel to the swamp and fight the native called Graf, who will guide her to the temple where she will face 4 challenges to prove herself worthy of the treasure. Oh yes, and in the meantime change her combat gear 3 times, each one more skimpy and not exactly more protective than the previous one. Good old fan service. The whole adventure can be considered a battle against time, and I think that the game's overall duration and its number of locations reflects well this concept, though the swamp is not that great place to visit. What a shit location. Graphically, this game was pretty impressive for its time of release. Ritual made excellent use of the Quake 3 engine, and in fact, Heavy Metal F.A.K.K. was much more stable and playable than seen in 1998. Furthermore, the game also runs very well on Windows 10, and for the occasion I applied a patch for the widescreen. The only big issue encountered is that the skybox is often glitched here and there, but I just had to uncheck the Use Vertex Lighting option in the advanced settings to solve it. And talking about the sound, well, Zach Bellica did again an excellent job with the soundtrack that is dynamic. In all levels you can hear different tracks, and sometimes I've got vibes from Sin. Seriously, it's a beautiful work. The dubbing instead can be very cheesy, and the dialogues are often silly, but believe me, you have no idea how trashy our Italian one was. It wasn't me.
Fit my kegs of amaranth ale, and I was just blowing out some rock.
That was quite a bang. What are you using?
Oh, baby, that's a lot for a first date.
Please, my people are under attack, and all I know is that the heart can somehow save us.
The heart to do more than save you, sexy thing.
Gruff, I need your help.
Before finishing, I have a few complaints. First, I must denounce the small number of featured enemies, and how certain mini-bosses are recycled, like the small version of the Vaimish Mama, or this asshole called the Soul Harvester, who appears several times throughout the game. Continuing, some locations like the freaking swamp are not very inspired, and the level design is sometimes too much linear, with very little verticality. And finally, the game ends with a fucking cliffhanger, and the sequel was never greenlit due to the poor sales. And that's really disappointing, because, in its brevity, Heavy Metal F.A.K.K. is an entertaining action from another era. It's gory, quite difficult, pretty janky, incites self-scamming, and also tends to over-sexualize its protagonist, modeled on the late Julie Strain, who also voiced her, just like in the animated movie. See, back then everyone was fine with it, and besides, such things maybe even guaranteed higher ratings from some reviewers. It's just a guess. Replaying Heavy Metal F.A.K.K. in 2024, 20 years after the first time, has been a lot of fun, despite the open ending and some other flaws. That said, a warm thanks to all viewers, and see you in the next entry.